the community's action in solidarity, and Association Jesus Solidarity invite you to listen to the Living Gospel. This Holy Friday, let us meditate on the Gospel according to John, chapter 18, verses 1 to 19 and 42, with commentary from Father Patsy Lloydy and the voices of Fricks and Kyle Del Rosario. Dear friends, today is Good Friday, and we read the Passion of the Lord, according to St. John. It is different from the Passion accounts of the three other Gospels. I'm going to change the way I comment. As the Passion is long, I will take several excerpts and will comment after reading each passage. I begin with an overview of the Passion according to St. John. The Passion account in Matthew and Mark is dramatic and terrible, while that in Luke it is a love drama. John's Passion is different. It is a story of lordship and majesty. Jesus goes to death as Lord and owner of situations. This and other differences are due to the fact that each evangelist highlights different aspects. John's Passion is the story of a victory, the story of the glorification of Jesus. It already contains the glory of his resurrection. The cross and resurrection are closely linked in unity. As an account of victory, John suppresses the episode of Gethsemane, which is humiliating, although he includes a moment of crisis of Jesus before his death in chapter 12. He recounts only a small part of the humiliations suffered by Jesus. Peter's denials are softened. In referring to the crucifixion, John does not speak of criminals. He simply says that two others were crucified with Jesus, one on each side. As to the words of Jesus on the cross, John does not bring the harshest, which is the only one inserted in Matthew and Mark, and none of the three that Luke mentions. John puts three words, which are exclusive to him, and none of them is painful. They express the passage from the Old to the New Testament, Jesus' apostolic passion, and his final triumph that we have referred to previously. Verses 1 to 11, the arrest of Jesus. When he had said this, Jesus went out with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to where there was a garden, into which he and his disciples entered. Judas, his betrayer, also knew the place, because Jesus had often met him there with his disciples. So Judas got a band of soldiers and guards from the chief priests and the Pharisees, and went there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Jesus, knowing everything that was going to happen to him, went out and said, "Whom are you looking for?" They answered him,
Jesus the Nazarene.
He said to them all, "I am." Judas, his betrayer, was also with them. When he said to them, "I am," they turned away and fell to the ground. So he again asked them, "Whom are you looking for?" They said,
Jesus the Nazarene.
Jesus answered, "I told you that I am. So if you are looking for me, let these men go." This was to fulfill what he had said, "I have not lost any of those you gave me." And then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it, struck the high priest's slave, and cut off his right ear. The slave's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into its scabbard. Shall I not drink the cup that the Father gave me?" On to Father Patsy's comment. The lordship and majesty in John's Passion can be seen beginning in the arrest of Jesus. The two words, "I am," recall those of Yahweh to Moses, and are so awesome for the Jewish people that they immediately fall to the ground. It is a plastic way of expressing the lordship of Jesus when they arrest him. Then Jesus continues, organizing his arrest. He asks or commands them to let the apostles go. he rebukes Peter for having injured a servant of the high priest and declares that his arrest and crucifixion is the cup that the Father has given him, and that he is going to drink. All these is improper for a prisoner whom they want dead. Verses 19 to 23, Jesus before Annas. The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I have spoken publicly to the world. I have always taught in a synagogue or in the temple area where all the Jews gathered, and in secret I have said nothing. Why ask me? Ask those who heard me what I said to them. They know what I said. When he had said this, one of the temple guards standing there struck Jesus and said, Is this the way you answer the high priest? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me? Father Patsy's comment. Jesus' reply to the high priest is improper. He is a prisoner, but addresses the high priest as an equal. He even dares telling the high priest why he is asking him when he has already spoken publicly. The last straw is when Jesus tells him to ask instead those who have listened to him. He is very bold and disrespectful. The guard shouldn't have slapped Jesus, although it seems quite understandable given the circumstance. Jesus' answer surprises us again. He continues acting as his owner and Lord even before the high priest and his council. Chapter 18, verse 33 to chapter 19, verse 11. So Pilate went back into the praetorium and summoned Jesus, and he said to him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
Jesus answered, Do you say this on your own, or have others told you about me? Pilate answered,
I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?
Jesus answered, My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom did belong to this world, my attendants would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not here. So Pilate said to him,
Then you are a king?
Jesus answered, You say I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. Pilate said to him,
What is truth?
When he had said this, he again went out to the Jews and said to them,
I find no guilt in him. But you have a custom that I release one prisoner to you at Passover. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews?
They cried out again,
Not this one, but Barabbas.
No, Barabbas was a revolutionary. Father Patsy's comment. I summarize the passages in between these verses. Meanwhile, Pilate had Jesus flogged. Roman soldiers put the crown of thorns and purple mantle on him, and they mocked him by saying, Hail, King of the Jews. Then Pilate presented him again to the Jewish leaders, saying, Behold the man. The chief priests and their guards shouted, Crucify him! Crucify him! Chapter 19. The Jews answered, We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. Now when Pilate heard this statement, he became even more afraid, and went back into the praetorium and said to Jesus,
Where are you from?
Jesus did not answer him. So Pilate said to him,
Do you not speak to me? Do you not know that I have power to release you and I have power to crucify you?
Jesus answered him, You would have no power over me if it had not been given to you from above. For this reason, the one who handed me over to you has the greater sin. Comment from Father Patsy. Jesus' dialogue with Pilate shows us again his dominion and lordship. His words could be from anyone except a prisoner. And it unsettles Pilate. To the governor's question, Jesus responds boldly, Do you say that on your own, or have others told you about me? No prisoner replies that way, and Pilate logically is upset. When Pilate asks another question, Jesus answers immediately, and Pilate is again bothered. When Pilate asks if he is a king, Jesus answers that he is, but connects his kingship to the truth. He's making Pilate dizzy, so he asks Jesus what is the truth, but leaves to speak to the Jews without waiting for an answer. Pilate wants to save Jesus, but he is a coward. Later, Pilate calls Jesus again and asks about his origin, but Jesus is silent, upsetting Pilate. Jesus does not shut up when threatened with possible condemnation, and as Pilate emphasizes his authority, Jesus replies that his authority does not come from being who he is, but rather from above. Otherwise, would you have no power? Jesus tells Pilate. What is there to say about all these? The accusations of Jesus, a prisoner, is most improper and totally unthinkable. But it is an important literary resource of the evangelist to declare something that is not in the synoptics, namely, that Jesus is owner and Lord throughout the Passion, that he acts with sovereign freedom above his own sufferings, his enemies and Pilate, and that, therefore, his passion and crucifixion are glorious and show his resurrection in advance. Of course, this literary framework is the work of the evangelist. The facts are still as painful as in the synoptics. John, however, does not insist on them, but on the freedom and sovereignty of Jesus. His passion account is of an inexplicable greatness. He invites us to admire and love Jesus without telling it directly. It is a passion of victory. Death sentence. Consequently, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jews cried out,
If you release him, you are not a friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar.
They cried out,
Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!
Pilate said to them,
Shall I crucify your king?
The chief priests answered.
We have no king but Caesar.
Then he handed him over to be crucified. So they took Jesus, and carrying the cross himself, he went out to what is called the place of the skull, in Hebrew, Golgotha. There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, with Jesus in the middle. Pilate also had an inscription written and put on the cross. It read, Jesus, the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. Now many of the Jews read this inscription, because the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. So the chief priests of the Jews said to Pilate,
Do not write the King of the Jews, but that he said, I am the King of the Jews.
Pilate answered,
What I have written, I have written.
The comment of Father Patsy. Of these verses, I will highlight only some points. One of them is that the Jewish leaders play on the fear of Rome, which used to appoint a governor in every land that they conquered, and Pilate is scared. A phrase that causes deep sadness, because it is put in Jewish mouths, is this: "We have no king but Caesar." It is unthinkable for the people of God to belong to other than God. Thankfully, only the leaders say it. The Jewish people never say it. We don't know if this episode is just the work of the evangelist. Let us also note that Pilate is now more assertive in this dialogue with Jewish leaders. They ask him not to put the sign, "Jesus, King of the Jews," but to write, "He said, I am the King of the Jews." But Pilate disagrees and replies, "What I have written, I have written." Verses 25 to 30. Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple there, whom he loved, he said to his mother, "Woman, behold, your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Behold, your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. After this, aware that everything was now finished, in order that the scripture might be fulfilled, Jesus said, "I thirst." There was a vessel filled with common wine. So they put a sponge soaked in wine on a sprig of hyssop and put it up to his mouth. When Jesus had taken the wine, he said, "It is finished." And bowing his head, he handed over the Spirit. Father Patsy's comment. In these verses, we have the three phases of Jesus in the Gospel of John. Let's say first that the union of the 7 last words of Jesus is not theologically acceptable. Why? Because even counting the similarities in the Passion accounts of the 4 evangelists, each one of them has his own theology, that is, his own vision of the facts and sayings of Jesus. As we have seen in John's account of the Passion, the sentence, "Why have you forsaken me?" in Mark and Matthew does not fit in John in any way. The ones that Luke brings correspond to his vision of mercy and forgiveness, which crosses his entire gospel, but does not appear in John. In John, the first words of the crucified refer to his mother and the beloved disciple. They are usually interpreted in the sense of declaring Mary as mother of Christians. Another interpretation is seen in Mary, the Old Testament, and in John, the New. The dying Jesus tells the Jews to take care of the new community that was born from them, and Christians to not forget their roots in Judaism. After centuries of fighting between Jews and Christians, their relationship is much better now, except perhaps when it concerns fundamentalist Jews. The second sentence, "with thirst and vinegar," is mentioned to make it clear that everything goes according to plan. The third sentence, "everything has been fulfilled," manifests 2 points. First, that no one takes Jesus' life, but that he gives it willingly. Second, it is a cry of triumph from someone who has carried out the mission entrusted to him. It is a sentence to meditate upon. concluding the commentary, let us emphasize once again that Jesus is the Lord of different situations and that he acts with great majesty. John wants to show us the other side of the Passion, as seen from the resurrection of Jesus and faith, and shows us the victory of Jesus against fear, against defeat, against death, and against the dominant civil and religious powers in the world. It is a huge, glorious protest against the arbitrariness of power, against injustice towards the poor and the weak, and against the destruction of innocent people. It is a protest raised high as a great victory for all the defeated people in the world. A deep meditation will make us understand better the dark clarity of Jesus' victorious passion, according to St. John.
Prayer. It's hard for me. It's hard for me. It's impossible. I have trouble climbing the steep mountain, never reaching the top. When I see your body hanging on the nails, my heart resists and denies that horror could happen. It's not possible. It cannot be. I look down, hands together. I bow my head and pray. Since I cannot understand it, I look up, and you are higher, and also deep below. On my side, on earth, on the rigid ground of the most horrendous crime. I cannot comprehend it. My love cannot understand. And when they explain it, my heart shouts at them, "No." But looking at you deeply, I discover that the cross is your victory, and it is also ours, and that I can sing with pain and joy, "Victory, you are the Lord and the King."